teach the other people about money, give back to charities that are important to you. Creating money or using the tool money to create wealth is not just about you. And I challenge you a little bit on the biblical verses. It's not the money that's the source of evil. It's mankind and how they use it for evil. Because there's more terminology in the Bible about money in a positive respect, about creating abundance, but not being greedy with it. I have to become a better version of myself so that those people that need the help are going to find me. And when I'm that better version, they're going to be able to relate. They're going to listen to the message. They're going to implement what I'm teaching. But if I don't grow myself first, I'm not going to be able to reach those people.
So, welcome to another episode of the Relief Podcast. My guest today, Angela Duncan. I'd like her to introduce herself because I think you can say it better than I.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity today. I like to start my story by telling people that I am a survivor of childhood abuse and poverty. And so when I was old enough to sign my own lease, I moved out of that environment. And I was always very curious about numbers and money. And so I wanted to learn more about this tool. So I went to college, was on the 5-year program, and I learned from a book, right, what money is. And I knew I needed to start my journey and get into real life and get around mentors and people who were experts about money so that I could learn from them. I was a financial advisor at one time. I am the top RE/MAX office. I owned a top insurance company, and now the host of Empower Her Money Podcast, where I get to teach other people about money. So it's been an incredible journey, but definitely a lot of hard work along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a struggle. Life's a struggle for a lot of people, right? And I don't think it's, as Rocky said, it's not about how hard you get hit, but your ability to get up and dust yourself off and start anew. And 2024 is proving to be a challenging year for many, a strong year for those who kind of have their financial house in order. What would you like to tell the audience in terms of, budgeting, saving, and earning, and being more intentional about, succeeding in those efforts?
Yeah, so you really have to take the time to figure out what it is that you want and take the time to invest in yourself first. The only way that you can become a better version is by taking that time for yourself. And what's powerful about that is the fact that once you take that time to invest in your own self and your own education, you can truly impact the people around you. And you can just change patterns, break cycles when you take the time first to take care of yourself. So I love that because we live in a world where there's so much free information. And so this is something that you have control over.
Yeah, and I think that it's lost in a lot of people because for centuries people would be stuck in bad marriages, would be financially codependent, perhaps even abusive relationships that they need to get out of, and they never believed in themselves, right? And first it starts with belief, and then finding that activity that'll provide the results that people need. What would you say is important in terms of financial literacy, where to get started? Like what kind of books or guides or teachers do you recommend that people?
There's so much information out there, and I think people can feel a little overwhelmed, especially if they haven't started down this money journey before. And there's so many books out there with different fads, or you need a dictionary just to be able to read the book because you don't understand the concepts that are in there. So I really recommend people go on YouTube and you find someone that you can relate to, that speaks the language that you can understand. And it's going to take some time to find that person. But once you connect with a couple of key people, and like for me early on, Rich Dad, Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, a lot of people know who he is. If you start with his early teachings, that's something that people can really grasp and hold on to. Dave Ramsey for me was also an early mentor. Very basic, very simple tactics that you can implement into your life right away. And so when you start with those little steps, then you can dive in deeper if you want to be able to get more education, or you find experts that kind of just help you along the way.
I mean, I think, and I've heard sometimes, like when you listen to a Dave Ramsey, he's like the no fun guy. No, you can't buy this. No, you can't buy that. And then contrast it with Grant Cardone. You talked to the other week. Um, he says you don't have a spending problem. You got an earning problem. Earn more money, right? So and I respect that perspective so much, because when you think of like Dave, sometimes you're thinking more like the Depression era of nothing's possible. Where I think I respect where he's coming from with those respectful roots of, hey, you can't overspend because then you're going to dig a hole that it's going to be hard to get out of, and that's what people are in now sometimes. And then you see this as a real estate investor. People sometimes fall in over their heads. People are they think that they can make millions in real estate, and then hire the wrong contractors, make the wrong deals with their lenders, and then sometimes have to sell. How are you navigating the tides and shifts of the real estate market in Florida?
Yeah. So one thing I want to address real quick with what you were just talking about. I love Dave Ramsey from the starting position. He's going to teach you what are your expenses, what are your income, get out of bad debt, start investing in retirement, and then build your wealth from there. So if you've never started on a financial journey, he's a great first start. Grant Cardone is also a mentor of mine, and so I'm hugely into real estate investing. But I believe you should not start there, because if you don't have a strong financial foundation first, your house is going to crumble. So if you don't know where your income and your expenses and your debt is, don't invest in real estate, because you're a disaster waiting to happen. And Grant Cardone is not for everyone, just like entrepreneurship is not for everyone. If you don't take the time to really learn about real estate investing, you can lose every penny that you have. I've seen we're in a very tough market right now when it comes to commercial real estate. This next 18 months is going to be extremely powerful for us to pay attention to as investors, between interest rates, possibly changing of a president. We're in a very difficult time. But I don't say that that's your first step. If you have never invested before, you're not going to go put a bunch of money in commercial real estate when you don't know what that means.
Oh yeah, it's a gamble, and sometimes almost weekly you hear of new people entering the market, kind of headstrong, like nothing I do will fail, like they have the Midas touch, and you're like, even if you have a lot of successful wins under your accolades, like sometimes you're like, nope, that's the best deal is the one you don't make, the one you pass up on, the one that you're not one of 10 bidders going all cash with no inspections. Like that deal that might have been done 2 years ago doesn't seem to make sense right now. And you have new projects that are delayed in delivery because of increasing construction costs. So there's so many factors in there. And if somebody, like you said, if they're not well capitalized or well connected in terms of being able to pitch the right deal to a lender or an institution, you're not going to get that far. And so it's best to learn. It's best to kind of be humble and be a part of groups where people can show you the journey, can show you that even if you're experienced in this business, you still have to vet your contractors. No one's your best friend. No matter how many times you have lunch or brunch together, you still got to run the numbers and it still got to make sense.
Absolutely. And know that if you're investing with someone else, it's like a marriage. When you put money into commercial real estate, you can't just say, hey, my car broke down, I need my money back. It's in there for as long as the investment needs the money to be there. And it could be 20 years. So that's why I always say you've got to get that house in order first before you go invest in real estate.
What other kind of limitations do you see people putting on themselves when it comes to money?
A lot of things that we put on ourselves as limitations comes from very early on. And until you sit down and really think about what your parents have taught you about money, you don't really understand that you're putting it into practice today. So that's usually where I start is what did your parents teach you? What are some early childhood memories you know about money? And all of us have very different experiences, and we carry that through our entire life. Until we become cognizant about what that is, we can't break or change that pattern. So when people say, oh, I'm never going to have enough money to retire, or real estate investing isn't for me because I don't know anybody who does it. You have to be able to break that cycle because those thoughts are coming from very early on in your life.
Oh, definitely. I mean, last night there was an investor networking event, right? And I'm kind of shy, even though I go out there and put myself in all kind of networking groups and get to meet all kinds of wonderful people. Like, I don't know how to meet a new person, but sometimes you just go in there, you say, introduce yourself, and you take an interest in what they're developing, and then you learn something. You learn what mistakes they made. You learn what was a success, and perhaps an innovation in real estate that you weren't aware of. Because there's so many different avenues, right? There's no two ways to develop a project, right? You hire someone and they give you feasibility analysis, or you hire an appraiser and it gives you 100-page report. And if you actually read it, there's some good stuff in there. I think a lot of people gloss over the details and don't study them well enough. And like you said, things are a marriage in every relationship that you're in with a property. You don't want to get in there for a year unless you're a flipper, a speculator. And there's room to speculate, but I think long-term, the people who earn wealth, and that's just income in real estate, keep their doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love networking events. And when I go, I've kind of changed my script because I don't like talking about myself. So instead of asking someone, what do you do for a living? I ask them, what kind of an exciting project are you working on right now? Or what are you investing in right now if it is a real estate event? Because I want to learn more about different industries. When you first start off in investing, I recommend that you start with one industry, right? Whether that's going to be apartment buildings or it's going to be storage units. I met someone last week who does RV pads, and I have never invested in that class before. So I just ask a lot of questions. And when people are passionate about what they're doing and what they're investing in, they love to share. So just listen, be a student, absorb the information, but don't jump from class to class to class because you want to get into investing. Pick one, really get to know it, get to know the partners that are in it, and know that they have similar values. Because in this market right now, the people you may have thought were incredible investors are losing every penny that they put in. And it's sad to see, but a lot of those investors didn't put in enough research to plan in the what if situation. What if rates go up? What if rents become flat and we can't raise them? What if insurance doubles and triples, which is done here in Florida? If they're not planning for those what if events, then they're not helping to protect you as the investor.
Oh yeah, I mean, see, those are the facts. Like, everyone's running to Florida, and I run to Florida many times. Joining different groups, and you don't think that, right? Like, what could happen? In the event of a hurricane. If a hurricane happens in Fort Myers, why does the price of insurance in Miami go up? Well, because it could happen there. Uh, Now, how do we factor for that? Well, did you put reserves on the side? What's a reserve? Right? And most investors don't even factor that. They just say, oh, look, it cash flows. Well, cash flow isn't profit. It's being able to understand that operating statement and that you are investing. And sometimes you don't take from that. You let the harvest grow. You don't uncover that plant too early and say, well, we're only mid-stage development. Let's sell it as is. It doesn't have its full value until it's complete. And
Very true.
when you look at a project, how do you kind of paint the vision of what a project could be? First, like, highest and best use.
Yeah. So as a new investor, when I'm talking to newer investors, I encourage them to look where they live first. Drive around at night or weekends, get to know the area, see where the building is taking place, because I can tell you all day long what I think, but I really encourage investors to look at it themselves as well, because then they can help give me feedback. Maybe they're going to see something that I hadn't noticed. And so it gives us an opportunity to build a relationship, to get to know each other as investors, as people. And when you can see that they're truly invested in learning more, then it helps me to solidify that, that relationship. So I always encourage the investors to drive around, look at properties. Where's the building happening? Where do you see moving trucks? Do you see people moving to neighborhoods, or are they moving out of neighborhoods? Let's look at the asset together, because then you can teach me, but then I'm also teaching you about the investing side, how to look at numbers, how to underwrite deals, how to look at inspection reports, how to put reserves aside or CapEx funds. But we work together as a partner, because I want you to spend some time getting to know the asset as well, so that we can come together and hopefully, plan for that future as I just talked about.
Definitely. And, because when you see like an apartment building, you're like, I want that to be a good asset vehicle for 50 years. You don't want to look at something and say, well, it might work for the next year or two, and then like an Airbnb. And then if it doesn't work out, maybe I'll just do something else with it. Like, when you're in the 10X category, right, you got to think a lot bigger, right? Just expanding instead of saying, well, this is what I can get now. It's like, well, how can I be a part of something huge? A Class A asset that is stable, that's not going anywhere, right? Where the people who go in there can support anything. Because if we rewind in history, the Miami recession in like 2008, people weren't paying their condo fees. The lights were going off in the hallways. The gyms weren't open, right? There was nobody in the front desk. It wasn't safe. Like, people forget that, right? And so if you're investing in quality assets, that's less likely to happen. So how do you go about figuring out if an asset is an A, B, or C type asset?
Yeah, great question. First, I want to talk a little bit about what industries I don't really look at and spend time in right now. Exactly what your point was. Airbnb for me is not an asset class that I want to even consider. There's a lot of areas that you can't control what the local government's going to do. I just saw an article recently that Palm Springs in California is limiting the amount of Airbnbs that they're allowing. Here in Florida, in the Lauderdale area, we have probably 10 hotels that are in process of coming up, permit, groundbreaking, type of things. And what happens is when we get a lot of hotels in the area, which we saw in North Miami Beach, is the city ordinance changed for Airbnbs. And so that's a class that I just don't want to invest in, because they can't control that local city ordinance. Student housing is probably another one. So many kids, my daughter's in college right now, and she can do most of her classes virtual. She doesn't have to live in student housing. She can live at home because most of those classes are virtual. So first, I like to kind of eliminate some of those classes first, and then start looking at an asset. For me, I'm not an investor in C. I try to stay away from B. C for me is questionable neighborhoods, questionable whether or not I can raise rents, what kind of tenants am I going to get in there. It's got to be on the lower price side. The investment itself for the area, price per square foot, is going to be on the lower side. I like stable. I'm more conservative when it comes to investing. So A class is going to be in a better neighborhood. It's going to be in a well-established neighborhood. They're going to have tenants that have been there for a while. The return of it is not going to be as great. It's probably going to be on the lower end of most of the assets you're looking at. And the price per square foot is going to be on the higher end. So that's kind of how you can tell that it's an A. But really, ask questions to your broker, but don't waste their time. They're not there to give you that education. You can go to YouTube University and get plenty of free information there. I contact brokers when I want to learn what's going on in this neighborhood. What do you like about the asset? What don't you like about the asset? What are you seeing going on in the neighborhoods? That type of information they're going to be most valuable for, but I also don't want to waste their time. So unless I'm truly interested in that asset class, then I'm not going to make that call. I'm going to go and get a mentor. I'm going to go and get free information so I can become better educated. So when I make that broker call, they understand that I'm educated and I'm a real investor or buyer.
The fact that you do that extra preparation, and in terms of building your talent and skill stack, so that when you do show up, you're ready, you're qualified, and you ask the keen question that they respect enough to give you more insight, and now you're better educated. So now you're even more seasoned as a real estate investor because you're able to ask these questions, respect their time, say, and frame it properly too. Hey, you got 5 minutes today to get on a quick call about this so we can talk about that. Yeah, sure. Right. Because you're on topic, you're respecting their time. You're not all over the place. And, um, you know, talk about the idea of maintaining a focus, like you talk to the average real estate investor. Oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. They wear like 5 hats. Talk about the importance of throwing out some of your hats.
Yeah, so a jack of all trades and an expert of none, right? You definitely don't want to be in that category. I want to be an expert in my field. So for me, it's real estate investing and podcasts. Those are the two things that I spend the most time educating myself. I love talking about money, so I read a ton of books. I do a challenge a lot of times with my audience, which is a 7-day challenge where you can cancel 7 subscriptions in your life, get rid of the noise so that you can spend more time educating yourself. The less distractions, the better for your financial future.
I think we can extend that challenge here too. All right, audience, look through your bills of the last 3 months or 6 months and say, hey, what's this? Are you going to 2 gyms? Did you cancel your Planet Fitness or when you moved on to LA Fitness? Because if you didn't, they're still charging you every month. So, that's a slow leak from your bank account. And, it's best to stop that. The same thing with subscriptions. You thought it was 1 week free and then it's $50 a month and it's been 2 years. So you're not going to use it. If you were, you would have used it already. So, turn it off and respect the resources you have so that you can have more.
Yep. Get out of debt. Now you've got more money to invest in real estate.
Oh, yeah. And I think people need to build their big why, like plan out their vision boards, their dreams. It's something I do with team members. I'm like, hey, why are we doing this? Not just, oh, this activity creates this result or a sale or a commission or a transaction, but what do you want? And someone says, well, I want to have a house or I want to help retire my parents. Okay, good, honorable goals. Now, how do we get there? Well, this activity. Okay, so when activity slows up, hey, is this still a priority? Right? Right. And then that's kind of like forgive me, but the gut punch that we need sometimes to kind of kickstart into activity, right? Because we all hit slumps. And, how do you talk to somebody who's in real estate who hasn't done well last year? How do you kind of give them a little pep talk to say, don't quit or, get your skills back in order and adapt to the changing times so you can survive to next year?
Yeah, I think we all approach that differently. It depends on the personality. I'm a very analytical person. So if your investments haven't done well, let's look at them. Let's look at what your decision was. Who did you invest in? What type of asset did you invest in? What kind of questions do you ask up front? And what kind of lessons did you learn from this investment not going the way that you wanted to? And that in itself is an education, right? It might be a very expensive education. I have had those. I've lost on investments. And so I have to just kind of retract and look at it from the beginning and from the outside vantage point and really dive into what went wrong so that I can take that lesson and apply it to the next. And give yourself some grace. We're human. We make errors. We make errors in judgment of people. We make errors in numbers. We make errors in predicting the future. Understand that all of those are going to occur and it's possible. So how can we best mitigate that risk going forward is to learn from that lesson. And perhaps we have to shift our focus, shift what we're investing in, who we're investing in, and making sure that we still have money set aside so that if that investment goes bad, we still can afford our everyday life and continue to invest. I would never encourage anyone to stop investing. You might take some time off, but jump back in because it's the only way that you're going to build true generational wealth. It's by investing in real estate.
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, think about if you go to New York City, right? Maybe not more people have moved out, but You see these buildings that were there for 100 plus years that are still apartment buildings. And perhaps they get renovated every 10 or 15 years, but still they're there, right? It's a part of the landscape, right? And the assets that you're invested in these, we'll just call them what they are, the red states, right? The places that that attract more investment, that are more friendly to business, that people have a higher quality of life. This is where they're migrating. And if you can create housing that they want to stay in, right? That's not transitory. That's not for a year or two, but they might want to stay for 5 years, 10 years and rent, even if they can afford to own, because it's a lifestyle community, right? And I think in Florida, sometimes people just they want things managed. That's why there's so many HOAs. As investors, I look at it and say, oh, I don't want to be a part of living in there. But perhaps owning the asset is good, right? It's all about where you want to be. Do you want to be in the driver's seat or do you want to be in the passenger seat? And you could either own assets or pay, be a tenant. And rents are rising, right? I mean, talk about that. How like just in recent years, how much rents have perhaps outpaced earnings on a whole, and how it's important to kind of out earn the increasing cost of life.
I also say this. I know we're talking about real estate investing, and real estate investing can be boring and very slow. So if you do have money set aside that you're using to invest, I do encourage people to take a small piece of that, maybe 5%, no more than that. And if you have a hobby, invest in your hobby and have some fun with it, because we get this one life. We have no idea if we're going to be here tomorrow. So while real estate investing is for your long term and hopefully, great for your retirement and for your family and for generations after, have some fun with investing too. For example, I teach money. I like to invest in purchasing old coins or old dollar bills. It's just something that's fun for me. Maybe you like wine. Maybe you like, car collecting or baseball cards or something. It's okay to give yourself some grace and invest in some fun things, and, because you're going to learn more about that hobby. And who knows, maybe that becomes a bigger part of your portfolio, and real estate, is something that's a longer term. And then you've got your hobby that's also creating wealth for you too. So have some fun with it too. Don't just stick to one asset class, but again, educate yourself first. Otherwise, you might as well just go write a check to a charity and give it away. Because if you're not going to take the time to educate, then you might be just flushing your money down the toilet. And we definitely don't want that for you either.
No, that's a brilliant idea, is to take your hobbies, what you do for fun, and turn that passion into profit, right? And it could start with an Etsy store. It could start with someone who handcrafts things, or in my case, I invest in a company that creates party trivia games, right? So you order stuff on Alibaba, you box up your site and you create a product and you sell it. Right now, is that a multi-million seller? No, but have I given it to high profile people? Yes. So I just have to figure out the in betweens, right? So again, it's fun because it challenges you in a new way. And when you're an entrepreneur with all these talents, sometimes it keeps your mind sharp to be in another business. It's kind of like a way to wind down. Is to say, oh, what are you working on when you're not in real estate? Well, like you said, real estate is boring and slow, and sometimes we have to wait on others. So that's outside our control. What are we doing during this waiting time? Create a side hustle. That might fund your next deal, right? Because when you need 100 grand to secure that next 20 unit property, that could be that generational future for your kid and grandkid. Where does that money come from? Right? You could be in an office, making commission checks, but that could take a year. But if you create a business, a system, you could create orders while you sleep. So that's wonderful that you empower women and many to want more for themselves. To empower, I think, freedom. I think you really stand strong for freedom, like, because when you have financial freedom, you can live anywhere. You can schedule your time as you please, and you can prioritize those who matter most in your life.
Yeah. Teach the other people about money. Give back to charities that are important to you. Creating money or using the tool money to create wealth is not just about you. And so when you hear people say, I don't need more money, or I don't want to have wealth, it's not just about you. It's about the world around you and the impact that you can create by taking the time to invest in your own education.
Oh yeah. No, that's powerful. I think it took me a while to kind of embrace it because biblical teachings tell you like money is the source of all evil. And I'm like, well, again, I think it's how you spend it. It's a tool, right? So tools can be used for good and for bad. So, talk about some of the causes that you like to support,
And I challenge you a little bit on the biblical verses. It's not the money that's the source of evil. It's mankind and how they use it for evil. Because there's more terminology in the Bible about money in a positive respect, about creating abundance, but not being greedy with it. And so that's a different mindset shift. But some of the other things that I like to think about is, I'm a mom and I can tell my child all day long about money, but I have to show her. And so being my authentic self and doing what I'm telling her, she's going to learn so much more. And then the people around you will start to question it too. First, people will think, oh, this is just an ad for you. And then they think you can't do this. And then they become curious because you're doing it. And then they ask you, what are you doing? So there's phases. So understanding that people were naturally going to question or challenge people when they're doing good things, understanding that process and just taking care of you and saying, I'm doing this for me. You're either on board and let me teach you and show you the way, or you're going to be in a smaller piece of my life because I'm moving in this direction. Perhaps you're not going to. And it's okay.
I truly respect like having invested tons of money and time into self-awareness, personal development. I love direct people more than anything. And when let's say you're raising your vibration, your frequency, right? You're getting into smaller rooms, and you may have to just create distance and boundaries with people, and they're just going to have to accept that or put in the effort to kind of come along, right? And you can still love people, but you might have to love them from a distance, right? Because when someone has a bad thought and it repeats, it multiplies, it magnifies, right? And you're like, no, that just don't vibe. When you're out in the sunshine, you don't want to have a cloud near you, right? And so pruning your garden of people who don't carry the same energy, it's going to benefit everybody. And I used to think, oh, but you're leaving people behind. I'm like, well, how much can I put in my truck? How much can I put in my wagon? I can't. It's too much burden, right? If we may pivot to self-care. A lot of entrepreneurs push themselves to like their outer limits. Talk about, I would say, the importance of either taking time for yourself, whether it be to reflect, exercise, have a spa day, have a lunch with friends. Like entrepreneurs kind of, some make it a pattern, some kind of slip it into their schedule. And some of the mentors I look up to, they say, well, you schedule that time first and then build your business around it. What has been working for you to make sure that you maintain peak performance in all you do?
Yeah, I love this question. Health for me as well. That's my word this year is health. I have fallen in that cycle as an entrepreneur where got too busy to take care of me. And your body tells you when that's not okay. I am a huge time block and protector of my time. So I start my day, I journal, I read a verse from my Bible. My dogs go outside, I go outside, I get sunshine. I'm very protective now, and I have to work at this every day. I'm very protective of what comes into my environment because for me, I'm not naturally a positive, happy person, but I want to be. So I know that I have to work at it every day. So I start my day very intentional with gratitude, with the sunshine. I'm in Miami, so I'm very grateful for that. And I spend time just with myself and I reflect and I write in a journal. I talk about what I'm grateful for. I remind myself of what my goals are and why I'm doing it because it's tied to an emotion for me. And then at the end of the day, I'm also very intentional. I don't watch drama. I don't watch TV. I have no subscriptions at all. Hulu, Netflix, any of that stuff. I watch funny videos. YouTube is free. I turn on YouTube on my TV and it could be Impractical Jokers or it could be like an episode of people falling down, whatever it is that just makes me laugh at the end of the day. I go to sleep laughing and I'm positive in that moment. And I very much control what's coming into my brain. I don't watch the news. You get plenty of it from people on social media. If I'm curious, I can go seek out that information. But from the beginning part of the day, working out every day, and then controlling the end of my day, that's what helps me keep my mental health and my body health. And I'm very conscious about what I eat, what I put into my body. And that can be tough as an entrepreneur because you're nonstop moving all the time and maybe you got to grab something on the go, or I don't eat for 10 hours of the day. But if I can at least start and finish in control, then that works for me.
Right. And so that's a beautiful plan for success. When, like you just mentioned, your network, the networking event I went to yesterday, I'm eating cucumbers, right? Everyone else is eating pretzels and this and that, and I'm eating veggies. I'm like, this is good. I'm like, no one else is eating this stuff. Yeah, they're running to the convenient food, the tasty food, right? And if I said, hey, would you invest in C grade real estate? No. Why are you eating C grade food, right? But I don't want to be judgmental, but I'm just observant. I'm like, I can't put that in my body anymore. You know what I mean? Like rarely, occasionally, but when you go out, you can pick better options from most menus or go to those restaurants that now you can afford because you earn more. Right? And you don't have to take fast food. You don't have to drive. I don't want to drive through and get food in a bag. That's not good. That's not fuel, right? That's bad fuel. And I think a lot of people in real estate are always on the go, being busy, but not thinking, hey, oh, I need to plan out my lunch. I need to plan out what I eat. Some people go so far as to plan out their macros and their grams of protein. But either way, like if you want to hit the top of the chart and you want to represent multi-million-dollar buyers or sellers of real estate, you got to show up. You got to have a clean car, a clean attitude, and a clean mindset. Don't bring any negativity to that appointment because people feel it before you even speak. Talk about the importance of posture, body language. I mean, I think some people are onto it and some people miss these signals, like sitting up. I think I sometimes don't do it enough, but like how that raises your confidence, your vibration, like, because you want people to look their best as you're empowering them. Like, how do you tell people kind of how to improve their style, improve their outlook, and even their smile?
Yeah. Like confidence comes from clarity. When you're clear on your mission and you know what your purpose is coming into that room, like you talked about the networking event, it shows. And so I am naturally an introvert. That's why I do a podcast so I can interview other people. Spotlight's not on me. But what I do is before I walk in that room, I think about I'm here to help impact people. I want to make a difference in their life, a positive influence, right? And so when I kind of think about that, it helps to make me stand up stronger, right? And when I walk into that room, I have more confidence because I know that I know my step and I know that there's someone in this room that I can help. And so when I come from it a different angle, then it helps me in my posture. It helps me in my attitude. And because I'm already controlling the first and the end part of my day, I'm already having that positive attitude. People with negativity don't tend to come to me. They don't want to talk to me because they're like, wow, that person's positive. That I don't know what's going on with her, but I don't want to talk to her. It makes them nervous, right? And that's okay because that's not the person I'm meant to impact in that moment. Dressing, I'm in Miami. Every networking event is like a fashion show. So if you live here, you understand that clothes can be very expensive. So I definitely have an app or two that I buy my clothes for to make sure that I have nice clothes for these events without breaking my budget. But it really is important. Walk into that room like you deserve to be there. Walk into that room knowing that someone is there for you to change their life. And when you take a great approach like that, it really helps in your posture, in your language, and how you approach people. And when they feel that from you, they're more likely to listen. They're more likely to open up. And when you make the conversation about them, to find out what is your need right now? What are you struggling with in your business? Or what project are you working on, like we talked about earlier? That lets their guard down and allows them to open up. And then you can determine, is that someone that you can help? And when you make that connection, I don't know, for me, it's an incredible feeling.
No, you help bring out someone's greatness. I mean, you take a little bit of like dust off the mirror and say, "Hey, look at what you can be." I see the beauty in you. I see that you're not living into your full potential, and that as a caring, compassionate person, let alone forget all the other hats we wear. I want you to be better. Winners love to run with winners. That's why they call it a winning circle, right? And you're in the championship town, right? I mean, to afford a town where it doesn't snow, right? You got to be your best, and it's part of enjoying life more. When you go to like the SLS hotel and you're hanging out at an event, because I think we were both at that same event. You're like, you meet even one person, let alone five. It's a tremendous lift to your life. Getting an insight from someone who has 3 decades more experience than you do. Wow, that sure is your learning curve. And if you pick up something from Marshall's and show up there, they say, well, maybe this is a newbie real estate investor. But you never know until someone talks, right? I think sometimes people rush to judgment and say, well, maybe someone's a winner in business but doesn't know their fashion yet. But that's all right. It'll get better. I still buy at the outlet stores. I still go to like Saks off, and I'll buy the best shoes I can, right? Because they judge people based on your shoes. But it's funny because you know what? Our feet carry us to many places, and we deserve to dress well, right? And I think it's something that you grow up into. When I started in real estate, you're like, no, I just need my boots and my jeans. Like in this room, right? You change your outfit, right? Clark Kent changed an outfit to become Superman, right? And so when you want to be empowered in your greatness, like you want to wear colors that complement you. Right, bright colors. You don't want to always wear somber. Though black works on everybody. What can you say that when somebody steps into their full power, right? Like I'm happy for them. You know what I mean? Like I'm really glad for your growth. Like because I think even just the short time that I've been around you, like wow, your star is ascending. Like where do you see yourself this time next year?
Yeah, I love that too. And understand too, when you're in that growth mode, you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel like you're questioning, is this where I'm supposed to be? Because it's uncomfortable. And that's when you know you're growing. If you're not uncomfortable in life, you're not growing. And so I have to embrace that feeling because for me, I know that God's got a bigger plan and he's already seen what the future looks like. And I'm scared right now. I feel this pull forward that I'm moving towards something else. And the anxiety that I have almost on a daily basis right now is incredible because I've never had this feeling before. So that's how I know that I'm in this growth mode and that there's something in front of me that's bigger. And I have to go through these little trials and lessons and continue to be the better version of myself. Because that's the person that I'm meant to be. And that's who I got to grow into to reach more people, to talk to more women about controlling their finances, to really change this poverty gap, to get people out of debt and stop living off of credit cards. I have to become a better version of myself so that those people that need the help are going to find me. And when I'm that better version, they're going to be able to relate. They're going to listen to the message. They're going to implement what I'm teaching. But if I don't grow myself first, I'm not going to be able to reach those people. So a year from now, I would love for my podcast, it's worldwide. I would love to reach more people. I would love to share more stories so that we can teach other people from real life examples that I haven't lived through that other people can relate to. And then myself, I know that I need to become a better speaker. I know that I need to work on that skill set because it's not something that I've had a lot of experience in. And so I'm taking that time to invest in myself from that speaker perspective, from an education perspective, learning about the podcast world and how to create a bigger audience. I have to take time to do that. Otherwise, I'm not going to get to that mission that's in front of me.
Oh, I mean, I definitely see it ahead. And sometimes it's investing in the right coach. Sometimes it's reading a series of books. I mean, a book that's on my table that I keep opening and reading is Speak to Win by Brian Tracy. Um, so again, it's, pick out what you want to speak powerfully on for a few minutes, for longer, depending on your audience and what their needs are, meeting them where they are. And so I think it's a grand vision, and you're going to continue leading by example, because each year it's a new you, right? And it's like who is Angela going to be this time next year, and how much of a further inspiration will you be for your audience and those who you want to bring with you in that growth journey. So I think it's a um, wonderful example that you share, and a life that you lead on purpose and with purpose, so that you can bring people to you know maximize their profit and their potential. And I think there needs to be more positive lights like you out there. So I really want to thank you for the work that you do. And how can people find you online, reach you, and work with you?
Yeah. So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and podcast as Empower Her Money. And then on Facebook, LinkedIn, just as Angela Duncan. And so, one last challenge to your audience, if that's okay. If you look at the people that are around you, your closest people, if they're not encouraging you to grow, if they're not helping to uplift you, whether it's in your personal life, if you're an employee or business owner, then I want you to think about you being in a cage and envision what that feels like. You need to find better people to elevate you. And as you become more elevated, your group around you is going to change. And keep the people around who encourage you and want to watch you grow and want to grow with you. And then you're going to have to spend less time and give yourself grace for those that perhaps are not on the same journey.
I love that. I mean, the idea of living uncaged, you know, break that rusty cage, as Soundgarden and Johnny Cash talked about. Like, you don't want to be shackled by the past, the present, and you want to empower your future to be who you were created to be, right? Like I said, our creator made us for a high purpose, right? And so if we limit ourselves, then we're limiting the gifts that we've been given. So I really want to honor you and thank you for your time. And I look forward to interviewing you next year to see what kind of tremendous gifts and gains that you've brought to the world. But thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
This has been great. We're off camera now, but um, I really like what you're doing with the work that you're, and I think it's where I want to go, because I want to start moving my assets off the table, the blue state assets, and invest in more developments there, starting with some flips and then getting at the bigger asset classes. Because as you said, I don't want to get in over my head. Just because other people bought this doesn't mean I have to buy it at any cost. At the right cost, yes. At the right level, sure. But there's more I need to do to get better at this, and there's people I don't know. But I know how to build affiliations, right? That's where it is. It's building relationships with the people like yourself, and then stepping up. Because my brand, real estate relief, right? I market a bit in Florida for deals, like try to find off market assets, but I need to get better at that. So, I'm working on finding the right marketer to get to that greater exposure. But it's like a challenging process. So I'm like, do I become my own marketer, or you know what I mean? Like, do you hire someone? Is it the who or is it the how? And you know, how do you figure it out? Is it more about building the right team around you to get there, or going strong yourself and making it happen.
Yeah. First, you got to have a real clear message. If someone was in an elevator with you, you've got 11 seconds. How do you capture their attention? What are you saying? You have to be clear on your message first, and then the marketing person can help you spread that message.
Oh yeah, clarify brand. So again, it built on core values like relief, standing for restoring communities, elevating the trades, living by example, integrity action, exuding positivity, and finding deals for investors. So who we are and what we do, all in basically our values, and then pushing that out into a message that relates to people. But when people are suffering, they don't want to call. They'll take your call, but they don't want to reach out and call you when they're 3 payments behind and they're about to lose it. So dealing with residential investors has been kind of like becoming a therapist. Like you read more about psychology than you do on sales. It kind of blends over. And I read more Carl Jung, Dr. Peterson, and I'm like, how do I understand the mind of the person who's losing everything? Like, I've had some losses, but maybe not the losses some of these other people have had. And it's still trying to relate and understand and empathize while building a solution that helps people move on. When you talk about making distance, if someone's not serious, you got to go. I'm working with serious investors who want to move on, or serious people who want to move on from their situation. I hope things get better on their own, but if they don't, I'm still here.
Mm-hmm. They have to know you care, right? Especially in that situation. They're embarrassed, blamed, and they don't know how to get out of it.
No, no, I'll figure it out. I hope you do. But see, I got to be nice about it, right? Like this modern thing of being snarky and sarcastic and a smartass, it doesn't connect. And you can see even some of the people we look up to. Once time they go a little off camera, and you're like, you could have said that better. You could have been a little nicer, a little kinder, right? And it's like my mom would tell me the story of like a cow. It's like, oh, I gave you all this milk, but if at the end the cow knocks over the bucket, you scattered your goodwill. You know what I mean? Like, brand reputation and management matters. Like you can start a new company, but you're still the same you. And locally, you see people kind of, we'll call them clowns, changing their stripes every few years, a new company, a new this, new that. I'm like, but unless you changed your style and you went honest, people aren't going to work with you. So, thanks again for being on the show. I think it's going to impact and help a lot of people, get better. And that's what I'm aiming for with the Relief Podcast, is to, bring on leaders. And then, I think it's kind of like an iron sharpens iron thing, where the more reps we do, the more conversations we do, we get better at this. And then when we're in that big room, you're completely comfortable talking to anybody because you're there. And perhaps your numbers start getting better. So now you can bring on bigger guests, whatever that means. But do you care about that? Like having influential guests on the show to share their messages? Like,
When it comes to my podcast, oh yeah, I'm very protective. It's my brand. You got to think of it as your business, right? So I don't want to give out messages that don't align with what I also believe. I'm not a controversy type of podcast. My intention is to teach other people. And so I want to make sure that I do a pre-interview. I want to make sure that their message, their business, their tips are worth my time too.
Filtering matters because, like, if you brought on the wrong message, it's an extension of you. And it's not like you always have to endorse everything somebody says, but you some way support it. And so it's like you got to be careful who you're on stage with too, right? When you go to these events, you're like, yeah, I like these 5 people, but this person doesn't have good integrity. You're like, you can say no and be like, I'll attend it, but I won't be on stage. You're like, oh, but you have a wonderful message this week. That's okay. There'll be other events, right? So then you didn't share shade on a bad apple, but people will know. And because you you want to basically encourage people to be their best, but if they're not congruent, meaning behind the stage and on stage, that got to be the same person. If they're different people, that's not somebody you want to work with or partner with on the next investment, because they put it on for the camera and they're not true from within to without. But anyway, that's what I noticed in some of the people I work with. But you have a great day. I really want to thank you again for being on the show. And um, if I ever have a question when it comes to like investing in Florida, could I ask you?
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure to share the show with me so I can share it on my channel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll share it. And like, do you want? I can share it like the way we recorded it, and you can have your team edit it and do all that. My person creates smart clips too from Riverside, and then you can repurpose that on social, however it helps you or your audience. Because I think there's always a good lesson in there that you're like, oh, that's a minute of gold. There's 2 minutes of it that you're like, oh wow, I said that. Like, 'cause, like, that came out of me. I did that. I'm like, wow, it's a moment of brilliance and clarity. It just
Yeah.
shines
Send me
up.
both links because the full episode I can just post up like YouTube as it stands so that I can draw back audience to you. And then, yeah, the other way, my assistant can put out clips all over.
All right, thanks, Angela.
Perfect. Talk
Have a
to you
great
soon.
day. Thank you.